Hi, welcome back to my channel. In one of my earlier videos, I've talked about these regulations 2018, which basically have been issued by the Commission, that is the SECP, and these regulations pertain specifically to associations not for profit and other charitable organizations, of course. So just remember that in this video, we're going to talk a little bit more about the rules that are contained within these regulations. I'm going to leave a link to that video down in the description box below. But like I mentioned in the other video where I talked about these regulations, that these regulations may not be very important for you if you're studying this course only at an introductory level. However, I feel that we do need to discuss a few other rules that are mentioned within these regulations. Why? Because these rules, in my opinion, by the way, obviously all of the rules contained within these regulations are equally important in their own right. However, I feel that a few of these rules are so important that it's a bad idea to exclude them even if you're studying this course at an introductory level. So I've mentioned just only 3 rules, 1, 2 and 3 rules from these regulations that I'm going to talk about in this video. So the first rule, basically I've just mentioned the bullet point, that is close relatives. Let me first remind you that in the other video where I mentioned these regulations, I mentioned one very important rule. I'm going to give a very brief overview of it in case you haven't watched that video already. So in that video, I talk about the rule that members of an association, not for profit, are prohibited from receiving any remuneration or salary from the association, right? So that video was particularly dealing with one MCQ which I had told you that my students found very difficult. However, in that video I mentioned only that members of an association, it's only members who are prohibited from receiving remuneration or salaries. However, there is an extension to that rule, which is again of course contained in the regulations 2018, and that extension basically mentions that it's not just members of an association not for profit who are prohibited from receiving remuneration or salaries. In addition to members who are part of the association not for profit, in addition to members, close relatives of those members are also prohibited from receiving any sort of remuneration or salaries, and of course the payment of dividends, that is something that only members are entitled to receive anyways. However, the question that arises next is who counts as a close relative, right? Because obviously it's confusing. It could be a never-ending, non-exhaustive list if you think of it, specifically in South Asian countries like Pakistan. So close relatives has also been defined in these regulations 2018, and close relatives basically includes your spouse, your siblings and the children of your siblings, and of course anyone who is your lineal ascendant or descendant. So in short, it's not just members of an association not for profit who cannot take or draw salaries or remuneration from that association. It's also their close relatives, that is their family members, immediate family members I should say, who are basically bound to that same prohibition. Right, so that's about the first important rule that I wanted to talk about. Other than that, the other rule that I want to mention in this video is that all associations not for profit are prohibited from participating in any sort of political activities, political campaigns, for instance election campaigns, and not just participating, they're also prohibited from donating, from contributing any funds from the association towards any such political activity. And other than this second point, the third point that I wanted to mention is that an association not for profit is of course bound to fulfill certain criteria that we've talked about in another video, and that criteria is of course mentioned in the Companies Act 2017 section 42 if you remember. However, in addition to that, there are other rules that the company has to comply with, and one of those that you should know about is that a company, basically an association not for profit, which is also a company of course, has to submit a statement which includes the future annual income and expenditure of the company, and also the sources of income and objects of expenditure. Let me just explain that. So future annual income simply means the future proposed annual income basically that you think that your association not for profit is going to make. And expenditure, of course, obviously simply means the expenditure that you're going to incur in running your association. And other than this, you also have to state where that money is going to come from, that is the source of your income, that is how you're going to be running your association. And other than that, you also have to state where exactly that money is going to be spent. That is, if you state a certain proposed expenditure, you have to also specify where that expenditure is going to be, that is, on what objects are you going to spend the money on. So these are the 3 points that I really wanted you guys to know. And like I said, even if you are taking this course at an introductory level, it may not be very important for you to go through these detailed regulations. However, it's very important for you to know. And by the way, one important point that I forgot to mention is that it's not just that members of the association and their close relatives are prohibited from receiving remuneration. The rule also goes on to state that these members and their close relatives, for instance, they quit the association. Even in that situation, they are prohibited from drawing for a certain number of years. I think at the moment it's a 5-year restriction. So for the next 5 years, even if you quit the association, you are still going to be prohibited from receiving any remuneration. So to exemplify, let's say that I create an association not for profit along with my let's say a group of friends. And in this situation, since I am a member, I am prohibited from drawing any remuneration while I am a member. And for instance, I decide to render my legal services to this association, and what I do is I decide that I quit the association as a member, and then I work for that association as a lawyer in the capacity of a lawyer, a legal advisor for instance, and then I ask for remuneration for my services. Is that going to be allowed? Yes, but only after a period of 5 years, because this prohibition basically applies even after you quit. For a period of 5 years, you are not allowed to draw any sort of remuneration from the association. So before I conclude this video, I'd like to reiterate a point that I mentioned earlier, that is that these regulations 2018 specifically meant for associations not for profit and other charitable organizations contain lots of further rules and regulations. And just remember that it's very important for you to know that these are not the only ones that the association is going to be subject to. There are lots of others that are contained within these regulations, but I thought that these are a few of the rules that you should definitely know about, which is why I chose to mention these. However, these regulations contain a lot of other rules that you should definitely look up if you feel the need to. For now, this is the end of this video. I hope to see you guys in my next video. For those of you who have managed to watch all the way towards the end of this video, I decided on second thoughts to include this sample examination question as a bonus for you. So this question reads as follows. World Class Football Association, WCFA, was set up on 1st July 2017 under Section 42 of the Companies Act 2017 and has made its articles and memorandum of association in accordance with Table F. In the light of the provisions of the Companies Act 2017, advise WCFA with regard to the following. WCFA intends to appoint Afzal, who is a member of the association and a lawyer by profession, as legal advisor of the association on a retainership fee of Rs 10,000 per month. Afzal is willing to resign, if needed, from the membership of the association.